You are listening to Invest in the Future by Future Africa. Future Africa is a platform connecting mission driven innovators and investors looking to turn Africa's most difficult challenges into global business opportunities. Please note that the content of this podcast is not to be regarded as investment advice.
But I'm just gonna want us to have a free flowing conversation. I made a trip, background wise, I made a life changing trip to Israel, and being a person of faith, Christian faith, obviously a life changing trip to Israel is a life changing trip anyway. But in my specific respect, I wasn't as transfixed by going to see the quote unquote tomb of Jesus and all that stuff. I love Jerusalem though; it's my favorite place in the world now. But I was more transfixed by meeting you, Michael, meeting Caleb in his habitat, meeting all these legends of the venture world, going to Volcani. Going to Volcani was like a spiritual experience, right? It's like the evidence of like 100 years of Israeli innovation. And that was the trip for me. But also I think I met a lot of people who, here in Africa, there's a lot of focus on investing to make money. And for the first time, I was talking to people who were talking about their values, and I was having deep conversations with billionaires about value brings value,
That's my line.
Hashtag values create value.
And I had a transformational meeting with Jeff Schwartz, and it was just an amazing experience. I'm still buzzing, and I can't wait to come back for a refill. It's the only trip I've taken in the last 2 years, if you can believe me. It's the only trip I've taken, and it was just like perfect trip right before the world tried to shut down again. Anyway, we'll talk about all of that. I want the community to meet Caleb, who's an amazing individual who's brought us on this path. God brought him our way to lead us on this crazy path. So there's that. We'll talk about that. And then I'm excited to talk about you, Michael Eisenberg, because of your book, The Tree of Prosperity.
The tree of life and prosperity.
Life and Prosperity, which I've been studying throughout. I've got a lot of sermons from that book. So it's gonna be very funny. I'm gonna credit Michael Eisenberg for my sermons on, for the next 10 weeks. I've got a series on that book. It should be in every church, but it's going to be fun. So we're just going to have a quick, just lively conversation, talk about Israel, talk about Africa, talk about the similarities and how we think about investing, and go from there. But first of all, Michael, how did you get into venture?
Oh, way to jump right into it. So it's an honor to be here, and thanks to Caleb originally for connecting us. A little buzzing about that. Thanks to Caleb for connecting us, and thanks for coming to Israel, because just like it was a transformational experience for you coming here, it was transformational for us, for me, and all the entrepreneurs that you met, and Jeff and others to meet you and to really learn from your vision and your passion and your, oh my God, energy. And so, and I think kind of broadly, this notion of values create value is, how should I say this? Faith-based people around the world, of all faiths, I think are coming together at this next phase to understand that eternal principles that we've all cherished for thousands of years will stand us in good stead in this next phase of capitalism, in this next phase of technology, in this next phase of chaos caused by a pandemic. And we can actually, close social gaps with market caps, and we can kind of get ahead and make money. There's nothing wrong with that. And at the same time, make people's lives a lot better. And I know you're doing that in Nigeria, and we're trying to do it in Israel and from Israel around the world. And so how did I get into venture capital? Catch this, I was unemployed. I started my career in political consulting. I like to say I've since repented from being in politics, but and then I couldn't get a job in Israel. At the time in Israel, if you hadn't done the army, you didn't have a network, it was hard to get a job. And so I ended up, after getting turned down by tens of jobs, I ended up just starting something. It's a longer story than we have time for on this podcast. I started something that became a merchant bank for tech. And then the bubble came along in the late 90s. It was super helpful to me in being at least bubbly successful. And we got fortunate. The first kind of 11 deals we did as a merchant bank for tech, which is we put in some of our own money that we didn't really have. We took the fees and recycled them, fees from the deals and recycled them into the companies, raised external money. Like 8 out of the first 11 either got bought or went public, some crazy number like that. And the other thing I was fortunate for is I knew something about the internet before I came to Israel in 1993, a little bit. And, then Mark Andreessen came along in 94 and, delivered the Netscape browser. And, the rest is history. So I was fortunate enough to do some of Israel's early internet deals when most people here didn't know what the internet was. And, that was super fortunate. Now we're on the cusp of another couple of technology revolutions, synthetic biology, cryptocurrencies, Africa, and a bunch of others. And, I was excited to still be around and people want to talk to me still. So.
That's amazing. That's amazing. As you were talking, I just realized how similar our backgrounds were. Because I'm not yet a repentant political consultant. It's just I'm on the funding side now. Unfortunately, my country is not developed enough for me to let go of it. But the one thing you mentioned is the merchant bank for technology companies. That's, Future Africa is primarily structured, well, we look at ourselves as a development finance institution, but it's structured very much in the same way as you have. And it's because no one will give me except you.
That was my pattern recognition. When I saw Future Africa, I said, oh my God, that was like what we did back in the mid-90s in Israel. I got to invest. And that's why I invested.
Exactly.
Given your sunny personality.
Now I understand why. I never understand. I was like, why? This guy seems pretty rational. Why is he investing money in crazy people like us?
Yeah.
But I completely get it. So no, that I mean, I think it's one of the things I admire the most about your story is that, you've just been on this really organic path, first principles path to tech. It's not like a career slope or something. It's just really being part of the journey, being early in defining the internet in Israel, and then building this extremely successful ecosystem because of your depth and understanding of these values create values. I want one more question, just talking about your background. I read the Tree of Life and Prosperity, and one of the things that I saw you emphasize a lot about was this concept of there is no need for us to treat impact as separate from returns, which is something that we share. We say here all the time that we're a high returns and high impact firm, and that you're not just doing this to give to charity. You're not just being good, but really investing with your values. We've come up with a bunch of values because we read your book. Well, we don't have 3 values. I'll tell you. It's lead with courage.
Wow.
Do hard things and help others prosper. And you know where that came from. So, so I want to learn from you. How have values and value-based investing, not being cheap on a deal, but values-based investing because you believe this is good for the world. How has that shaped your investment career and your view of the future?
Yeah. So a couple of points. One you reference in your last value, which is, I think much of the world talks about redistribution, like we have a fixed pie. And I believe at least that we can grow the pie. And the way we grow the pie is by bringing more people into prosperous jobs and prosperous parts of the economy. And so, it's in the book, but it's worth repeating. When I was a student at age 19 in the yeshiva, which is like a house of Bible study, and I was studying in Israel. I had an interaction with a rabbi. It wasn't a sermon. It was like a question and answer time. And I asked him, whether if I moved to Israel, there was, Jewish people believe we need to settle this land. If I moved to Israel, did it matter where I settled in order to kind of fulfill the commandment of settling the land? He said, it's all nonsense. What you really need to do is set up a factory that'll employ 10,000 people who can earn an honest and decent living. That was in 1991. And so he really clued me into this notion that if people can earn an honest and decent living, not only do we expand the pie, we make people's lives better. So I think that's point one, which is leading with business. We can help people earn better and decent livings. Number two, I think people of faith are actually optimistic about the future. And because we're optimistic about the future, we want to make the future better. And now you want to make the future better. We all believe technology has made society better, and it will make the future even better. So where would you want to be other than technology to, one, empower more people to earn honest and decent living, and two, improve the future? And then a third element is, I say this in a later book in the series. There are 2 more books in the series out in Hebrew, and they haven't made it in English yet.
Whoa!
Yeah, you got another 50 sermons coming.
I need to learn Hebrew now.
Yeah. No, they're coming in English. We're working on it. They're coming in English.
You're getting there.
So one of the points I think is important to point out is most people in the world believe that if we just come together, we can build something. I actually don't believe that. I think if we build something, then we can come together. And technology is kind of a universal language where if you're in Africa and you created a company, say Indela, and those people are working with people in Israel and people in Washington, D.C., and we built something great. We then have a language of communication. We then have a language of building things for the future. And I think that's part of this value. There's a value to work itself and to working together.
Yeah.
And we're not just looking to give people money or anything like that. There's a value to work. And so in the values create value notion, working together on projects that move humanity forward, technology, and expanding the pie in and of itself creates value. And to your point earlier, I don't believe in impact investments because I don't believe in sacrificing the bottom line for some impact. I believe that the bigger the bottom line, if we have the right intentionality and are in the right places that expand the pie, cause people to work together, solve real hard problems, that in itself creates bigger and bigger impact. I'll give you an example, by the way, for a portfolio company we actually haven't announced yet. So this is a clue into a crew here. And then we'll talk about one that you met. I have an investment in a company called SafeUp. SafeUp comes from a woman named Netta, who unfortunately witnessed someone attempt to sexually assault a friend of hers, and she walked in on it. And so they set up to create a social network, quote unquote, that helps women feel safe at night or wherever they are, wherever they're walking, etc. This has now built a social network movement of women who are helping each other in many ways. And so with the right intentionality, this will be a prosperous company, but it's building a movement alongside of it. And we can talk about Rise Up. You met Yuval, right? Do you want to talk about it?
A life-changing company to me.
Oh, yeah.
Company. I just hope they prioritize Africa sooner. If I could give him half my leg to do that, I'll do it. But it's crazy.
So here's for the listeners who don't know, here's the Rise Up story. So Yuval Sammet, together with his partners Tamara Cohen and Yiftach Bar, decide they're going to set up a company to increase financial empowerment. And this is important. So Yuval sold his first company to Klarna, which is a very successful Swedish payments company, powers much of e-commerce in Europe at this point. Comes back to Israel and says, I grew up in a poor neighborhood and grew up poor in a town just outside of Tel Aviv in Israel. And I want to improve people's financial outcomes. Now, this is important. Most fintech startups that have popped up provide more lending, faster lending, faster underwriting, et cetera. His view was most people who are in economic stress make bad decisions and take on more debt and credit than they can handle. So he built an AI tool that lives in Messenger or WhatsApp or wherever it is, a robot, takes in your credit card information, your bank information, your spending habits, and basically gives you a path forward to get to the positive side of the ledger. Don't live in overdraft, you can save money. And around this, he built a community of people who are rising up, who are moving out of overdraft and into positive. And now people have assets that they can invest in order to improve their lives going forward. And they're out of the stress caused by being in economic stress and debt all the time. So they make better and better decisions and create self-efficacy of people. And we've done that in Israel. It's exploding now in Israel, by the way. Since you saw him, he's grown the business 40%. I think it's been a month and a half ago, right? Yeah, it's exploding. And we're about to go outside. You want to go to Africa. Other people want to go to Europe. We'll get there. But it's a stunning model of financial empowerment. And here's a case where we are positively impacting families' bottom lines, causing them to save and invest instead of spend and take more loans.
Right.
And we're creating massive impact. Family life is better. Family life is legit better.
That's amazing. I mean, Rise Up is an amazing company.
And it's a supportive community, which is unbelievable. You got to see it. People are cheering each other along. That matters. We all want some support.
Yeah. Amazing. So I mean, and this is how we want to invest, Michael. And that's why we're super excited to have you on board, because we can't think of any other way to invest. I keep saying it. I was like, look, if all we did was invest in companies that made 1 billion people's lives better rather than made us $1 billion, I'm good. I'm fine. I don't care that much about the return. The beautiful thing is the companies that make 1 billion lives better are invariably companies that become worth $1 billion almost all of the time. So
yeah.
So super excited about that. Now I want us to go to talk about trip to Israel, and I want Caleb to share his experience here, because Caleb, the first time I met Caleb, he messaged me on LinkedIn, and I love LinkedIn because LinkedIn is one of the places where I meet all the life-changing people. So he messaged me on LinkedIn and he tells me, hey, why don't we just have a conversation? But I want him to tell it from his side. Like, I'm still curious, why Africa? There's a lot to do in Israel. Caleb, why Africa? Why are you so excited about Africa? You're staking your career on it.
I mean, first of all, my message, to you on LinkedIn was much less humble than, hey, I think we should have a conversation. It was more like oh my God, I'm obsessed with what you're doing. I have to be a part of it somehow. Channel that E energy, but I can share that. And I'm really, I just want to take a second to just express my gratitude for this moment, because it's kind of coming full circle for me. A little bit of background was that I didn't grow up in Israel. I grew up in California, but my love for and appreciation for Israel and Judaism was actually, it was inspired by my late rabbi. He should be forever blessed. His name was Rabbi Michael, and Rabbi Michael Berenbaum. He inspired my love of Israel and Judaism from the age of 5 years old. And so here sitting with Rabbi Michael 2.0 is just really, is really special for me. I also got into the venture space unemployed after the army here in Israel. It was after the 2014 Gaza war. I had just been released, and I got a call by a company, a small company at the time, but today is one of Israel's larger and active venture investors, called Our Crowd. And they invited me to join their team, actually on the premise of being able to help a country and ecosystem that I care about by telling powerful stories of tech and innovation. So I set out on a journey there where I learned what I learned about venture capital. But then I was invited after 5 years there to visit the continent and talk about the Israeli ecosystem. But my trip to the continent brought me back to Israel with nothing more, like nothing but just like immeasurable excitement for what's going on in the ecosystem. and I came back with just a list of companies and a list of people that I wanted to invest in. I wanted to invest my own money in them, and I wanted to see the investors that I know start to not just invest in these companies, but just because venture capital, and Michael can speak to this, and so can you. It's such a people-powered business. It's so much embedded in those relationships that I kind of had this thesis going, which is really this Ian, Michael, seeing you together for me is also kind of a full circle like embodiment and validation of that thesis that not just Israelis can help solve some of Africa's greatest problems, and African leadership can help Israel be kind of a light unto the nations as we sort of think about ourselves. But if we work together, we can really solve some of the world's biggest problems.
Yep.
We can be an incredible force by working together. That was the thesis that sort of brought me to it. But that venture capital in innovation and solving hard problems based on our shared history, our shared values, and our strong character was gonna be the way to do that. It was an imperative to do that, but it was also an embodiment of everything that I learned about venture capital, which was taking risks, solving hard problems, and I also just why Africa, those reasons, but how to do it was to make sure that I could find the best team working on the continent and join them and supporting them.
I want us to get to the part where you get me, to just show up in Israel, right?
Okay.
And so we had this incredible week, which should have been 2 weeks. I'm coming back to get my last week, right. and it was amazing. But for me, I think what I really enjoyed about the Israel trip was this was a nation, and you saw the history there, that started out, thinking deeply about its challenges and deploying technology to solving those problems.
Right.
Michael, I guess this brings me to my question, which is, what can we learn? And that's the topic here. What can we learn from how you took this industry in 1993 to what it is today, right? I mean, Israel is one of the most valuable startup markets in the world.
Yeah.
We're on that path. We've had a breakout year last year, but we want to keep it going. What do we need to keep in mind, Michael?
So first of all, you got one giant advantage over Israel, is that there's a lot of people in Africa. And we got a shortage of people here and a shortage of talent. I think that's, when I look at the future and look at well springs and kind of secular trends, having a lot of young people, which Africa has, who can kind of leapfrog what's going on in the world and be a reservoir of talent that we can train going forward, I think really matters a lot. So that's a big advantage. But I think there's 2 or 3 things that are important to do. And I think some of you talk about in your sermons. One is we need to create a safe environment for people to take risk. And sometimes, for example, in communities of faith, that's difficult. Yeah. Because everyone turns up at church or synagogue and says, "Oh, he failed," and so and everyone's kind of talking about him in the pews. Yeah. And so we need to create a safe space for that and let people really explore the edges and take risk. I think that's point 1.
Yeah. Point
2 is trust, and that is there's capital, there's entrepreneurs, and there's people who go to work at these companies, and we need to build communities of trust. I think in COVID it's tough right now because we actually got to get people together. I'm a huge believer that trust is built face to face. For example, I committed to invest in your fund before you came, but I sure as hell was glad you came to Israel and I got to meet you in person. It builds trust. Yeah. I think that's kind of point 2. Israel has an inbuilt community of trust because of mandatory military service. But other ecosystems form them in universities, form them in other places. And so you need to find a way, or by mutual referencing, to build trust. And I think the third thing is you got to make bets on ecosystems. Israel's betting big now, I hope, on synthetic biology, and crypto's becoming a bit big on cyber. We ought to kind of figure out, Africa is a giant continent. Where are areas that, in Nigeria, where you're starting out now, you can bet big, and the ecosystem can bet big and, create a center of excellence. Could be for geography, it could be kind of technology, kind of, services business. Like, I love what you're doing with the financing for Uber cars. I think that's super interesting, right? For low-income areas, figuring out the underwriting for that is hard, and is a unique skill. And for what it's worth, earlier in my career, there was a discussion what I call the India price, which is, they said if you could sell it in India, it meant you could manufacture it for a low enough price, and then you could sell it anywhere. I'm not sure that was true for what it's worth, but I think when you look at chaotic systems, and Africa probably has more of that right now than for a Western European or an American economy. That's an opportunity to get stuff that you can build for not just emerging markets, but markets that go into chaos, and more are going into chaos because of disruptions. And I think that's valuable in and of itself. And so I'm super bullish, by the way. I'm super bullish on our partnership. I'm super bullish on Israel, Africa. I'm super bullish on future Africa. As you know, after I met you, I upped my investment. So
immediately.
So I'm really bullish. I'll just add one other thing, because a lot of people listening from different parts of the world. We're at a point in history now where we need to double down on to borrow a term like what I call a coalition of the willing. And this is to will people, I don't call that, somebody else's word, but we'll borrow it, which is we need to will billions of people on the planet into the 21st century. We need to will foundational tenets of principles, faith-based principles in particular, because they take care of other people, into the 21st century. And unfortunately, as a person of faith myself, I think we've had a hard time interpreting, timeless principles into 21st century terms. And we need to do that more. And I think we need to will together what is this capitalism 2.0 that spreads wealth and empowerment farther through the tools of technology. And I think we got a shot at it. And I think you're a big leader in that, E. So thank you for your leadership. And by the way, Jeff's on it already. We're coming to Africa. We're doing a home and home.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to it. We got to do this live and build trust with the ecosystem.
Yes.
People can see it. I want to talk about two things, Michael and Caleb. I would love to have you chime in as well, very quickly.
Yeah.
One is what are the opportunities for Israeli companies, or what kind of opportunities are Israeli companies or Israeli investors looking for in Africa? That's number one. And what kind of opportunities do you think, Africans working together with the Israeli ecosystem, what kind of opportunities do you think will be possible as a result? Because you guys are so advanced. You guys are, I think I was reading an article and it was like, we did $4 billion last year in funds raised. You do $8 billion a month or something ridiculous like that. So I was like, that's pretty interesting. So I'd love like what is possible when, Israeli innovation meets a continent like Africa, which is 40% of the 40% of the world's population. What could be possible there?
So let me tell you something interesting about the Israeli ecosystem. So we got started, call it 30 years behind Silicon Valley. And one of the things that's happened is we're now, call it 27, 28 years into the Israeli ecosystem. Only now are we getting to companies of meaningful scale, scale of global companies. And I think the reason for that is ecosystems need a couple of turns to work. You sell your companies early, you don't have enough talent or management talent, et cetera. So the first opportunity I see, because Africa and Israel, by the way, are basically in the same time zone, is if we can get partnerships going, or African engineers working at Israeli companies instead of going to, India or wherever it is, we can accelerate the learning curve of Africa to get to those meaningful companies of scale. I think that's one opportunity.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of opportunity around financial inclusion and fintech
Yeah.
that's highly relevant for Israeli companies in Africa, and maybe vice versa as well. As you know, you had M-Pesa in Kenya was way ahead of everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's a second opportunity. I think there's going to be some really interesting opportunities as you skip technological generations and build infrastructure.
Right.
There's going to be cyber issues that I think are pretty meaningful. There'll be remote communications issues that are pretty important in Africa.
Yeah.
Energy and grid management, super interesting. And then I think, what you're doing with the Uber thing is the beginning of an opportunity around the financing of things.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the ideas that I'm really, really interested in exploring with you when I get to Nigeria is thinking differently about cryptocurrencies in called less developed economies as a way to onboard people into 21st century economies. I think relation there between Israel and Africa is perhaps transformational.
Yeah. Amazing. I mean that's just, those are areas of opportunity that are very big, that are huge for us. Maybe some of the other ones, and maybe Caleb, you can speak to this. I'm super excited about agriculture somehow,
Yeah.
I'm still so
volcanic.
Shocked. Yeah, like how did this desert feed itself and export to other countries? Is crazy, And so, what are your thoughts about what Israeli-Africa collaboration could look like? Very quickly.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with everything that Michael said, right? And with regards to the sectors, but what I think even like beyond that, the way to it is also, on the line of what Rabbi Michael here said, which is that it's about getting together, right? When Michael finished his investment, he gave me 2 assignments. One are returns, and second is to bring E to Israel, which purposes was to meet, to tell that narrative, and to create that story. So I just think that, like, again, not just thinking about the sectors and all the projects, because there's no shortage. We could talk all day about deep tech, whether it's even synthetic synthetic biotics or pharmaceuticals and flying cars, like space. I think crazy in that way with regards to sectors, but I think that just the more the more that the world opens up and the more that we're able to get together and start to build these relationships, which God willing is going to happen a lot in 2022. And of course, anybody in the audience here that wants to come to Israel should just hit me up. I'd be happy to give them the Israel tour. I think that spending time together is really just going to be the driver, because we're going to see all these commonalities and set these intentions. So I know that's a little bit of like a vague answer, but I think that's what I think. It does hold that, and the infrastructure kind of geopolitically and with flights, I think is really going to enable that.
Looking forward to that.
But it's going to be about building decacorns. It's not going to be about building small unicorns or small companies. It's going to be globally transformational.
I'm very sure. Oh yes, Michael.
I'll give you one thing, because you brought up ag, and I think you're right about that, by the way. And there's a huge amount of ag tech in Israel. But I'll tell you something else. I'm a chairman of the board of the largest volunteer organization in Israel, called the Shomer HaChadash, in Hebrew, or the New Guardians. And what we are is a movement that brings youth and adults to work the fields and guard the fields and work in ag. But one of the things we discovered is that when people work together in the field, like working together in tech, they come together, and it builds loyalty, trust, solidarity. Because even better than coding together is sweating together in the hot sun. And it's been a galvanizing movement for youth. And one of the ideas I had after you came here, I'm actually, when Jeff and I come, we're going to bring Yoel, who's the CEO of this movement, to Nigeria. And we think there's a lot to do with kids, an exchange program with kids around ag tech. and getting them exposure. And that's something that we're super excited about as well. How you kind of turn ag and ag tech into a movement that builds trust and solidarity and empowerment among young people.
Amazing, amazing. So we're going to go on to our questions from the audience. First of all, I want to say this has been such a great conversation, a lot of insights. Michael, I'm going to ask you a little bit before we move into the questions, because I want to go into the questions quickly about some of your most famous investments. And I think one of my favorite things about your investments is that you built these companies from scratch. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, how did you spot a Lemonade? How do you spot a WeWork, right? How do you spot a Wix? Like, what were you thinking when you invested in these companies? What were your guiding lights?
Yeah, well, let's be very clear about something. I built nothing. Entrepreneurs build companies. I just give them money. And so you've been an entrepreneur. I haven't.
You built a merchant bank.
Yeah, and then a venture fund. But yeah, whatever. That's just a money business. And again, it comes down to trust, and I think being surrounded by people who are smarter than you. And so, the Lemonade guys, it's true that I put the two founders together. I knew one was interested in the future of financial services, and the other came to me to build what he called at the time a peer-to-peer insurance company. But the core insight there was that they thought differently about insurance, which was insurance today is a broken model. They make more money, the insurance company, when they deny your claim in your time of greatest need. That's a broken model. That's the opposite impact. That's like, negatively aligned. They said, we can align this. We can build this like a software business that also sells insurance and just take a piece to run the pot, so to speak, and be totally aligned with our customers. In the same way that RiseUp got totally aligned with their customers. Instead of making money by giving them usurious loans, they make more money over time by enabling people to save. And so one key insight is alignment. Second key insight is always work with people who are much smarter than you are. And three, Jeff Bezos has said this before, and it's funny, find missionaries, not mercenaries.
Yep.
And so, we spent a lot of time, we had a talk actually in the partnership this morning. What are the questions that we ask in order to find missionaries and not mercenaries? And so, you want people who are going to die on the hill, figuratively, not literally, obviously, to make sure that they get their innovation out to the market. And I deeply believe, by the way, and it's been true about Wix, Wix empowered a lot of people to get into the 21st century digital business. We were people's first website because it was easy. It was easy to get online with it. And, WeWork, I'll tell you if I start about that, but these are aligned businesses with a mission, with missionary founders who want to improve other people's trajectories. The crazy story about WeWork was the first time I went to visit it, I walked the halls and I talked to all the members of WeWork. Okay, there was a beer distributor there, there was a graphic designer, there was a startup company, and there was a fashion person there. And so I went to the beer guy, I said to him, why are you here? Like, you can be anywhere. What are you doing in this WeWork? And he said to me three things. One, these are my peeps. These are my people. This is my community. They support me when business is so good. It was like stunning in a shared office space. He said, number two, when I need like a graphic design work for a flyer, I just walk down the hall and there's someone there I see and trust. I know them. It's not an anonymous call. And the third thing they said is people are sending me business here. No one ever did that before. And those are empowering communities. And so, all those things I think kind of matter. And, and then obviously a good dollop of blessing from God and luck.
Of course. Can't do anything without that. I'm going to take a few questions. I'm going to take the first one from Kushal's question. And what he's asking is, what do you think the impact of crypto would be on VCs? I'm actually interested in hearing your answer to that.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. It's already having an impact. So I've been a personal investor in crypto already for 8 years. And we actually, you can go find this. The name Colored Coins is owned by one of our companies, which is one of the first kind of things around NFTs from 2013. And so you can go find, we launched a Colored Coins Challenge in 2013 and backed an early crypto company called Kolu. I've done some since. And so, number one, I think the ability to raise money, so to speak, from the crowd through ownership is a meaningful element in our market, and will take some companies away from traditional venture funds. That's number one. Number two, there are not 100% of the world is suited for crypto. Let's just be clear of that. Not 100% of the ideas or software. So not 100% of VC is going to be crypto, but I think some meaningful will, and I think we need to get better at it, candidly. We've done a couple of deals in it, but I think it is disruptive, both because there are new entrants in funds, and as I mentioned, the model is different. The thing I don't know is, there's a giant crypto craze now.
Yeah.
I remember this from the 90s about the internet. And so at some point, this comes down to earth. How low earth is, whether it's like dead sea low or just kind of, sea level, I don't know. For those of you who don't know, the Dead Sea is the lowest point on earth in Israel. And,
I didn't know that.
It's the first stop on E's next trip.
there you go.
I didn't get to go, so I got to go there. But really interesting. I mean, and that for like, I have a follow-up question, because I'm always intrigued by investors that have seen bad times, because I'm always thinking about them, but I've never seen them before. So I feel like I'm like the wolf, the kid crying wolf. I mean, what does it feel like to invest in the lowest point of the internet?
So, Bill, for those of you who didn't hear it, Bill Gurley and I did a podcast with Harry Stebbings on 20 BC.
I'm going to type a link to it right now.
Yeah, 20 BC, about kind of, reminiscences and what's relevant to today from the crashing or the bursting of the bubble in 2000, 2001. We have a whole generation of venture capitalists who've never seen a down market, because they started like in 2009, 10. We haven't had a down market yet, which is stunning. And I'm not one of the people who believes that this time is different, but you never know when it ends. And innovation is constant. So you need to invest through boom and bust cycles. And you need to kind of keep your nerve to be able to pull the trigger. And what happens is a lot of people have big portfolios that grow during the boom, and then they find themselves doing a lot of triage and cleanup work in the bust, and don't have enough money, don't have kind of time or risk appetite to invest. And I think that's important to do, during bust as well. But you got to keep your nerve and invest into the uncertainty. I'm pretty certain there will be a bust in a bunch of things. When it'll happen, who knows?
So how do you prepare for it?
So I'm the boy who cried wolf too, by the way, because for the last 4 or 5 annual letters that I write to our LPs, I've been saying there's going to be a bust, so we're loading up on cash at our companies. So we keep doing that. And so one thing is, if you have cash, you can get through anything. If you're making money and you're profitable, you control your destiny. So those are 2 ways to get through it. But I'll tell you an interesting story about a company of ours called Bookaway. Bookaway, we invested in sometime in beginning of 2019, I think. It's in a business of travel and kind of not normal markets, not Western European American markets. These are markets that are unusual for some reason. And they got like buses and boats and things that weren't digitized. And they digitized those how you book a bus in Burma, right? For argument's sake. And it was growing like crazy, fastest growing company in our portfolio. And then the pandemic hit, and basically revenues went to zero. They dropped like 98% in like a month. That was pretty ugly. What we did was we cut back on the company to make sure we had enough capital to last, and then said, we'll be contrarian. If we're in trouble, other people are in trouble too, and they may not have venture capital. We raised more money and bought 4 competitors who were struggling on cash flow. That was a contrarian bet into the pandemic, to go buy travel companies at the beginning of a pandemic, which we did. And now, by the way, travel's back in a bunch of places like South America, some parts of Southeast Asia, and in Croatia, and it's doing this. We're actually back to pre-pandemic levels in smaller number of markets.
Another investment I made like that was like Move. I remember the day I put the first car on the road, everywhere was shutting down, and I felt like a fool. Just like the Naira was dipping, everywhere was shutting down, and we were investing in this company, literally all we had. And now we look like geniuses, but that is, it's crazy.
No, you are a genius.
But I like this. No, I'm not. I'm learning to be one. That's why I have you in my team. But I like the perspective you have about investing through boom and bust, and I think it's going to serve the ecosystem well. I don't know, like you said, I don't know how things are going to shake out, but I want to be ready for anything. And for us, what that means is like we're focused now this year on just, you know, we're probably going to get out of the valuation party that we think is happening here. And we're going to just slow down and focus on investing very early in founders that are solving hard problems in large markets, because we just feel like, you know, that's the only way to guarantee value through boom and bust, because we don't want to get caught up in a bust type situation.
Yeah, one of the things I mentioned on the podcast is, you know, you invest early, you don't have valuation risk. Sometimes though you do have liquidation preference risk. If you know you get like SoftBank, Tiger, or Cotu, whoever it is on top of you, and they got big pockets and sitting on top. You know, you could, if valuations drop, you could end up getting a lot less out of it than you think.
Well, I think about that. What I usually do, I mean, it's a very tough battle for me. So what I do is at 100 million, I try to take out my investors' money and ride. You know what I mean? And just leave it. If I think the company is not what it feels like, despite all the investors, I just exit. And then that's how we roll. But anyway, I have one more question. I think we have time for a couple more. Scaling in a limited market, and I know a lot of what Israeli companies have done is like innovate in Israel for the American market. Africa is poor. I got to say this because sometimes it's like this impression that like we're a big market. And everybody forgets that it's a big market, but it's a lot of poor people for now, right? And so there is a reluctance to go global that I find puzzling. What can we learn from Israel about being willing to go global day one?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. One of the benefits of the small market is no one thinks of going local other than Rise Up, by the way.
Right.
So initially you just got to get out. And so that forces you to focus outside from day one. One of the things I find important for entrepreneurs is to ask the following question. What does market dominance look like? Right? Which is already on day one, ask yourself the question, if I own 100% of this market, 80% of this market, how valuable is that to me? That tends to set your eyes straight on if this is a good market to target or not, right? Because you want to know how big is up and how much money you can return to your venture capitalists, and you know how big is the mission you're taking on going to be. And so I think that's a useful exercise. By the way, the answer is sometimes complicated because sometimes you can define a target total available market, sometimes you can't because the market's happening. And then you have to ask a second level question, which is, okay, let's say this market evolves. Where will it evolve fastest? Where will it evolve biggest? What's the trend you can ride? And that kind of leads to the third level question, which is, what are the winds pushing you? You know, a lot of people like to take on hard problems, but you need to figure out what is the secular trend, the wind that can push you into something that's bigger than you are. And I think that's an important thing to define. And so, for example, like, I don't know enough about Africa, but if you told me, nobody's, I'm making this up, you'll get the point. Nobody's got an ability to get a secure wallet in Africa for the next 3 years, you're probably going to do something in crypto there, right? And so you just need to ask, there are secular trends out there that happen with or without you, but they can be powerful winds that push you, and you want to ride one of those.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If you were to boil down the success of the Israeli ecosystem to like 3 key points, right? From the point of view of, you know, how we should be thinking about what we do together as an ecosystem. And that's not just you, but like all the amazing people in the ecosystem. What would you say those are? And what's the role of government in all of that?
Risk-taking, esprit de corps, to borrow the French term, which is people turn up for each other here big time, even if they're competitors, by the way. They turn up for each other. I think that's critically important. And what I call this mix of optimism and resilience. You need to be optimistic about the future and optimistic about your outcomes, and therefore resilient if you get knocked down. Those are the three core traits. What can the government do? There's two different answers to this question. One is, if you asked me this question in 1991, 92, I think the Israeli government did something amazing. They basically insured, I think it was 50% of losses of venture capitalists who came to Israel to start the industry. So the government, I think, put $120 million in 1991, 92 for venture capitalists to go do that. I don't think that's necessary today. There's so much money in venture capital, even in Africa at this point. I'm not sure it's necessary. But maybe if people think that, for example, political upheaval or stuff like that could risk their investment in Africa, maybe that's necessary. I think the most important thing any government can do right now is, one, help deliver a talent pipeline through technology education.
Yeah.
And number two, get out of the way on a bunch of regulatory stuff. It makes it difficult for startups to attack really hard, big problems, whether it's financial services, ag is another one, health, etc. And, make it a welcome mechanism. The mayor of Miami, who was a guy I love, Francis Suarez, has made that place the most welcoming place for entrepreneurs and for innovation, for out there innovation, crypto, etc. And I think, there's a competitive war for talent now that's global. And governments need to compete, not so much on financial incentives as on making it a sandbox that you can actually do kind of really interesting things without the regulator getting in the way. And I think money finds it. Money's global today.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do in the city. So we'll see.
I think that's also a big area, by the way, in Israeli-African collaboration, is that sandbox idea. As they talk about it in Rwanda as the POC sort of opportunity. So I think that can be another really big place for collaboration and testing out technology, and that'll help the Israeli ecosystem a lot, because I think Africa has a lot of value to give on that front.
Yeah, I'm going to do one more question because I thought it was a really important question. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all the questions. I'm sure we'll find ways to answer them, or you can read the books or listen to the podcasts, and you get a lot of this. But there's this question from Paula Mugisa, where she's asking about complex problems and complex solutions. Now, I want to put the question in some context so it's more helpful. Israel is a country, with a lot of interesting challenges, right? I remember going to Jerusalem with Caleb, and I was just stunned by the amount of coordination that's required in the chapel where you go to see the tomb of Jesus. I was like, the Coptics are here, the Ethiopian. I was like, whoa, this is like an exercise. This is I don't know how do you compute this? but tell me, what can we learn from Israel in terms of solving extremely challenging problems?
Look, I don't know. I think it's difficult to project things, on complex issues, one on the other. But I think the one thing that's universal to this is we need daring, bold, ambitious entrepreneurs like you, who want to tackle the problems. And so the core thing is that we uncover, find, enable, empower ambitious entrepreneurs to go do this. Even the Israeli military is pretty entrepreneurial. Let anyone speak up. I gave a talk to senior military officers last week. Nice. Guys 3 and 4 levels down the rungs spoke up to the commander of the division. And I think that's important. We need to find these people because there are, they're future leaders in entrepreneurship, the military, et cetera. And so we need to dig a couple levels down in Nigeria and Africa to go find the leaders who can solve these complex problems and supercharge them and empower them, surround them and give them the confidence that they can solve this. Because it's individuals with unique insights who are, as my partners at Benchmark who say, are learn-it-alls and not know-it-alls, who can solve these problems. And so let's find more of them, empower them, invest in them, and get them going. And that's how we solve things in Israel.
Amazing. Well, I'm looking forward to your trip to Nigeria. and a few other African countries. We have to take you to the others. When you come just to Nigeria, go to Kenya, go see them over there, go to South Africa, go to Egypt. We'll check out some places. Egypt's really close by to you guys. So, and your point about talent, I mean, there's something we're cooking up, which we'll bring over to you about talent. With one of the most amazing and impressive Israeli entrepreneurs I've ever met. I met a lot of them, but he's just
who came through Michael and Andrew, of course.
Yes, introduced by you. So we're working on something to get more African high quality engineers to go spend time in Israel to kind of take on this culture of innovation by working closely with Israeli companies. So
I think we talked about hosting them in my organization, Nevo, right?
Of course. You got first dibs every time.
Yeah,
Of course.
no first dibs. We don't have the power to be honest.
You have to get first dibs. There's no way. Awesome. And I don't know if you have any last words for us.
Yeah.
Any advice? Any thoughts? Any
or Torah.
I'll say something from in the Jewish faith, we're now reading the book of Exodus.
Amazing.
And the great leader Moses comes to us at the beginning of the book of Exodus. And Moses is chosen for a very simple characteristic, which is he's curious. The Bible says that Moses says to himself, I'll stray from the path to see this amazing sight of the burning bush that won't be consumed. And as soon as he strays from his path to examine this wonder of nature, God calls out to him and says, Moses, Moses, you're the man. And so I think, and then Moses goes to Pharaoh and says, we're done with this political order. We're done with being enslaved. We're done with being impoverished. We're going to fix this through freedom. And so, I think we're looking for entrepreneurs who are super curious, who can stand up to the, existing order and say, hey, we can do better. We can get more free and prosperous people who work together towards a common goal based on, wonderful, timeless values. And so, let's do it. Let's just do it. Let's find those people and let's do it.
Amazing. I'm delighted to be doing this with your mentorship. Thank you so much, Michael. And Caleb.
Thanks, Caleb.
Yeah, thanks, Caleb, for bringing us together. We're going to be reading the Tree of Life and Prosperity a lot this year. So, and I'm just delighted that we have an opportunity to interact with you and learn from you, really, and the support that we've enjoyed from you. And we're looking forward to welcoming you in Nigeria.
I'm coming. God bless you. Keep doing the amazing work, E.
Thank you so much.
God bless you too.
Bye. Bye. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you so much. And feel free to share more questions. We'll try to get answers for you.
Yeah. And share your thoughts with us too on Twitter. We love to read them.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Bye. Thank you, Caleb. Thank you, E.
Bye, everybody. Shalom.
Thank you for listening to that Invest in the Future episode. Please follow us on social media. Our handle is @AnAfricanFuture on all platforms. You can join Future Africa to co-invest in these innovators who are turning Africa's biggest challenges into global business opportunities by joining the Future Africa Collective, our exclusive community of co-investors. Please find more information and apply at future.africa/collective. Thank you for listening once again.